Hello, welcome to part 2. Okay, we've looked at my daughter, who is at the moment Indonesian and English, and the question I put to you is when she is 17 years old, she must choose an Indonesian or a British nationality. So, where should she live, England or Indonesia? I've taken a video of 4 people who have lived both in Indonesia and in the West. Europe, Australia, Britain. Here's where you're going to need your headphones. You've got to listen very carefully. I'm only going to play these once. This is your task. Listen to the person speaking and write down on your paper the advantages of living in Indonesia and the disadvantages. The advantages of living in Australia or Europe and the disadvantages. You've got to listen carefully. We're going to start off with this man here who's Scott. He's one of the management at TBI in Bandung. Are you ready?
Hi guys, my name's Scott and I'm from Australia. I've been living in Indonesia now for about 6 years, and in that time I've had to adapt to quite a few cultural differences between our two countries. So I'll speak about main 5 I think I've seen so far. When I first came to Indonesia, probably the biggest difference I found was the gap between the wealthier people and the poorer people in Indonesia. In Australia, the gap is a lot narrower, with the wealth of the country actually being spread out a lot more. Whereas in Indonesia, there's a lot of extremely rich people, but also extremely poor people. So one thing I needed to get used to in that time was sympathising more with the current situation of the poorer people in Indonesia. Another difference between our cultures is I found the Indonesians tend to be a lot closer to one another and also their families in terms of their interactions with one another and where they actually live as well. In Australia, people tend to be more individualistic and live separately apart from each other, and whereas in Indonesia, there's a lot more of a community feel, I guess, with people interacting with each other a lot more. Also, I find Indonesians tend to live more with their families and have a lot stronger family bond, which I think is quite maybe a better thing than Australia in some ways. Whereas Australia, we tend to separate ourselves a bit from our families as soon as we can, and have less interaction with them over time. Indonesians tend to have a lot of more family affairs and a lot closer to their families. One thing I really liked about coming to Indonesia is the traditional food and traditional clothing, and also the music of the country. In Australia, there is a certain culture there, but there's a lot less traditional things that I like in Australia. In Indonesia, as you can see, I'm wearing batik clothing, so I like the clothing. I also like Sundanese music and Balinese music as well. I think it's got a lot of character and builds a lot of the Indonesian culture. One other thing I've found I've had to get used to as well with Indonesians is that in Indonesia you're a lot more superstitious than I am, and people tend to be in Australia. The belief in ghosts and the paranormal is a lot more seen in Indonesia and believed in Indonesia, whereas in Australia, we tend not to think about things in terms of ghosts and supernatural. We'd rather look at things like evidence, I guess. That's about it from me. So, see you around sometime.
Thank you, Scott. Now, the next 2 people to speak. This is interesting. The girl here is Cindy. She is culturally Australian, but she's an Indonesian citizen. But she's chosen to go and live with her family in Sydney. Her English is native speaker standard. She's chosen to leave Indonesia and go to Sydney. Whereas this young man down here, Angga, also Indonesian, very proud of Indonesia, and he spent most of his childhood and his early teens in Western Australia. He's chosen to come back here and make a life in Indonesia. Let's start with Angga. Let's listen to him. So write down, remember, the advantages and the disadvantages of living in Indonesia or Australia. Ready?
When I was a kid, I lived in this tiny town called Caty. I can't really even call it a town. It only had like 30,000 people in it, and it wasn't that fun actually living in such a small place. I mean, our neighborhoods, our houses were tiny, but our yards were massive. It never seemed to be like there were people around. Even if you go into the center of to the town square, as it were, there was just basically maybe a few other cars around buying stuff, and shops were closed all the time. That kind of sucked. And the weather in this place, because it's in the outback, it's like 400 miles inland. Yeah, we actually lived in basically the desert. We have in our summers, we can have 40 degrees Celsius up temperature, in the daytime, and then you have like 5-degree nights. So the weather kind of sucked there. And also convenience stores aren't really convenient, because here in Indonesia you have warungs that are cheap as, you can buy things for extremely cheap, extremely close to your house. But in Australia, your convenience stores are a 5-minute walk away, which is pretty nice, but the prices are exorbitant. It just doesn't make sense to buy stuff at convenience stores unless you're only buying, like maybe a candy or a chocolate bar or something like that. Yeah. And one other thing, I love walking. I love walking and cycling, and I used to, I'm not now, but there, drivers aren't really aware of people on motorbikes or on bikes. So it's kind of dangerous cycling, because unless you were wearing, a full-on orange jumpsuit or something with reflective tape that people could see. Not like here, where people are afraid of people on motorbikes and bikes. So those are the kind of things that were kind of sucked about living in Australia. However, walking there was actually quite nice. You had nice pavement that you could walk on. The buses you could go anywhere on buses, they're on time, and you don't really have to wait for people that much, which is nice. Buses there. And there was this place in our neighborhood, right? If you walk down the road, there was it wasn't a park, but it was like a massive wood. And my friends and I would have, we'd play our war games, we'd BMX in there, there's lots of stuff. It's not, so you were kind of close to nature, and that was pretty fun because, here, in a massive town as Bandung, there's aren't really any open spaces, no greenery, no parks, no anything. We had parks and woods and stuff that we could explore. I spent a lot of my time just, hanging out there with friends, doing weird stuff. Not that weird, but, fun stuff. That was nice. Yeah. But, yeah. Yes, basically, those are the things I remember. Oh, apart from one other thing. Cheap food. The cheap food there is really nice, but it's the same thing in Indonesia as well. Like, cheap food in Indonesia, you have like gorengan and you have Indomie and stuff like that. I love getting the equivalent of those things in Australia, which would be fish and chips, meat pies, things that you just put in the microwave. They're not good for you, but they're what you want, I guess. So yeah, the cheap foods are always nice. I guess everywhere you go. So they're just different, I guess. But same, nice. Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you, Unger. I hope that made sense to you. He was my boss up until 2014. He has a master's degree in English language teaching and is a very smart guy. Cindy was one of the teachers I helped train. Very competent teacher. She's now living in Sydney. Let's listen to her.
Okay, life in Australia. I think I'll start with the negative things about Australia. Supermarkets and malls usually close at 5:30 every day. And so if you finish work at 5, you can't go to the mall, you can't go to the supermarket. We only have one late night shopping night, and that's Thursday nights. Even on the weekends, they close at 5 and 5:30. Another thing that I don't like about Australia is, I don't know, some parts of Australia are still a little bit racist. But, I mean, where I lived, not much, but you just go to some parts and there are still people that stare at you, or if you speak your own language, for example, if I speak Bahasa to my parents, they will stare at me and look at me like I'm weird or something. And another thing is, in Sydney, well, in Australia there are a lot of burglars, especially houses, so you have to have an alarm in your house. And roads are very quiet at about 7 or 8 p.m. at night. So yeah, if you just want to go down the road or to the shops and stuff like that, it's really quiet. Okay, things that are positive about Australia. School goes for 6 hours, and that's like 9 to 3. And I think that's good because parents have more time to do housework, and parents can be more independent, perhaps even look for a part-time job. Whereas here, I think school starts at 7 and most schools finish at 12 or 1. So it's kind of difficult to be a working parent in Indonesia because of that. So I think longer school hours is so much better because you know that your children are safe. I think it's good. Another good thing about Australia is the ID that we need to have. If you want to go into a club, if you want to buy cigarettes, alcohol, you need to show your ID, and you have to be 18 years or over. And I think that's a good thing because I know that here a lot of teenagers can get into clubs without ID. And I don't want that to happen with my children because I am bringing them up in Indonesia. So I think in Australia that's a good thing. Public places such as toilets, restaurants, all clean. I mean, I can go into a public toilet and it's really clean. There's toilet paper. It's not wet. I don't have footprints on the toilet seat, and that's a good thing. Restaurants, the cutlery, spoon, fork. I can't recall myself ever wiping a plate in a restaurant in Australia or wiping the fork and knife. But I do that all the time. If I'm going to eat in a restaurant, I always wipe the plates with a napkin, or I always wipe the cutlery first. And road rules, another positive thing. Here it's just so dangerous the way people drive. I'm really paranoid when I'm on the toll. In Australia, everybody follows road rules. You must have a license to drive. You must go through the theory test first, and then you can do the practical test, and then you get your P's and your L's and things like that. And I think that's really good. People drive with a speed limit. But it saving a lot of lives. And I rarely see a road accident in Australia. I haven't seen one actually. Yeah, so one more that I want to talk about is things that are not the same, but not positive or not negative either. Public transportation, we have timetables in Australia with buses and trains. And that's good because, if you want to be in the office by 9 o'clock, you catch maybe the 8:30 bus, of course. And if you want to go to the city, I live 45 minutes away. It's an express train. I used to start work at 8:30, so I have to leave my house at about 7 o'clock. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Cindy. This is the end of part 2, and we'll listen to my Italian friend in part 3. Okay?